I started watercolors 8 months ago, and while I went through a lot of ups and downs with the process, I've not only managed to stick with it and make great progress, but now I also know how to spark that fire inside and motivation to grow my skills even more. So today I'm going to share 10 tips that have helped me reach this point and actually improve my watercolor paintings, and that I think will help you too if you want to boost your own learning process. Some of those tips are basic ones because it just make not only so much sense, but I've actually tested them myself with great success. And some other tips are not going to be what you would expect, like the usual get the right supplies, learn this or that, and so on. But they will give you some awesome results too, so keep on watching. Hi, I'm Françoise, welcome to my channel. Today I'll be painting realistic lips in watercolor as I go through these 10 tips, so sit back, relax, and let's dive into the good stuff. My first 2 tips are part of those more obvious ones you may have heard of before, but they are so important in the way they unpack your experience with watercolor that I feel this would not be a good video for this topic of improving your watercolors if I just skip them. So I'm happy to give you my perspective on these based on my personal experience. So my first tip is to use high quality paper, and by that I mean 100% cotton watercolor paper. And if you've been watching some of my tutorials, you know I always use and recommend the Arches cold press 100% cotton paper because it handles water and layers really well. It makes colors look really pretty and gradients and blends look flawless, which is not really the case with some other types of paper. I love the twist the paper has, and that's typical of cold press. It's not too much like rough, but it's better with water than the smooth hot press papers. And the fact it's made with cotton and not cellulose like some other lower quality papers helps with working with a lot of water, and that's why these 2 features, the 100% cotton and the cold press texture, I think matter a lot for great results and a much better painting experience. I also noticed that 100% cotton cold press paper is appreciated and used by a lot of people out there for the same reasons. So if you've never tried it, I highly encourage you to. For instance, when I got serious about learning watercolors last year in 2019, I started practicing through tutorials, and I can't remember exactly how, but I had decided on this exact paper brand and quality even though it's not cheap. And I think it's my art store that had recommended it to me as the best to work with. So when I started practicing, it wasn't easy because I was new and I had a lot of things to learn, but I was enjoying myself and the process. And soon after that, I went on vacation. I came back 2 weeks later, and for some reason, I started painting a gradient using some cellulose-made hot-pressed smooth paper I had from my early purchases. And my jaw dropped in disbelief as I was painting because I felt like the little skills I had acquired the month before had for some reason vanished. There were noticeable streaks from my paintbrush on the paper, the colors were light and just not pretty, and my gradient between 2 colors I was trying to blend was everything but smooth. So once I got over the shock and disbelief that gave me, I realized this was not the paper I had been repeatedly using before my vacation. And there I go painting my gradient again on the 100% cotton cold press this time. And you can't believe the difference. Actually, I showed the before and after in a previous video. I will link up here if only I can remember which one it was in. So what I mean to say is that if you're not getting the results you want, if you think watercolor is not for you, the paper can really turn the tables. And if you haven't tried 100% cotton cold pressed, please don't give up, or don't be harsh on yourself because you think you're not good enough, and give it a try, and I'm pretty confident you will see the difference instantly. Talking about giving up, my second tip once I figured it out is what had me step up my game with watercolors by taking on new challenges and also stay motivated in the long run, and I'm talking about water control. Learning how to control water, being able to assess things like how much is on your brush, how much water is on the paper, if the paper is drying, if it's still wet enough, not wet enough, can feel like a nightmare when you're just starting out. And I've been there not that long ago, and I remember it frustrated me a lot when I got those blooms and harsh lines or effects I did not want, just because I had no clue about how to control water. And it seemed like a lot of people had figured this out. It was like a big secret, but I didn't understand how, and it felt like practice wouldn't even help me. And in fact, it does help, but there's more to it because I did some research on the matter, and that research combined practicing made it easier. I'll link a video about water control I made a while back after I figured all that out. If you're having issues with this, it will help you understand why this or that is happening and how to avoid it. For me, I saw my skills improving really fast once I got over the water control learning phase, and I can guarantee you it's totally worth it to keep practicing. You will get better, it will get easier and more enjoyable as you go, and it doesn't take forever to get there if you practice regularly. The great thing with understanding water is that it becomes easier to avoid unwanted marks or blooms or the paint bleeding somewhere. But even if some of that happens, in most cases, it becomes possible to fix the problem, and painting is just more enjoyable. Understand it, practice with it. It's the key, and you will get good at it. And the second tip of understanding and mastering water control leads me to the third tip, and that is to reframe your mindset around watercolor and your watercolor goals. If, for instance, you have a tendency to give up on things easily when it's not working out, or to get frustrated fast, watercolor can be super challenging at first when it's not doing what you want it to, and when you don't yet have all the tools and knowledge and practice to work with it in a more agreeable way. I used to give up easily on things in general, and when I started watercolors, I prepared myself a little more, and I told myself not to give up no matter what. So I read a lot about mindset in that sense, and that has helped me tremendously with my journey. And you'll find tons of motivational YouTube videos or books on the matter. And one resource I often go to when I'm in doubt, whether it is watercolor or life in general, is Marie Forleo's videos on YouTube. I like her a lot because she talks about issues such as fear and failure, and she never makes you feel guilty, but instead, she always has great advice to get moving towards your goals. And that's one example. And there are many other people out there who can help you gather the motivation, confidence that you need to stick with watercolors and push further to get better at it no matter what. And what's great is that mindset work is also valuable for other aspects of life as well. Something I struggle with, aside from frustration and giving up too easily, is the fear of failure. And that is something causing me to put a painting off just because I don't know if I can nail it or not. I'm still not completely over that, but I know for diving in projects I feared that once you get started, it's all okay and the fear goes away. And most times with perseverance and work, you get it. So as you can see, there's always ways to improve your skills, and it's not just about the paper or the paint or the paintbrushes you use. My fourth tip to make mindset work even more powerful is to surround yourself with artists whose work you admire. There are days I don't feel motivated or inspired, and usually scrolling through beautiful creations by other people is enough to pump me up and trigger the need and motivation to grab my supplies and start painting. And for that, I'll go to Instagram and scroll through my feed. And if you're not on there, I recommend you to check it out because I think for artists, it really is one of the best platforms for instant art motivation. My fifth tip is to take it one project at a time. So there you are trying to learn watercolors, and there's so much to learn about. Color mixing for one, the basic techniques, which supplies to use for the type of effect you're trying to get, and so on. And I know how overwhelming this can feel, so what I've been doing, and that's the case for all of my YouTube videos, is to concentrate on one thing. Here, for instance, I'm painting lips. Last time I did a landscape, I knew how to paint everything for but water. So all I really had to focus on was water, and I learned and perfected a new skill. And looking back, there has been a lot of progress made. So don't despair if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Take it slow, focus on one thing, painting one simple flower, for instance, and next time learn about splatters, and after that learn about backgrounds and so on. And little by little, you will become faster, more confident, and able to take on bigger projects without feeling overwhelmed, and you'll be able to paint a full picture, for instance. In the same way, and that's my sixth tip, take it one color at a time. If, like me, color mixing and color theory puts you off, pick one color and study it. For instance, you could try to match that color to all the other ones and see how it reacts, what it looks good with, and so on. And then you could also go monochrome. If you look at my previous videos, I painted a full portrait of a girl with sepia, and I did that because the portrait itself was already a lot of work and a huge challenge for me, and I didn't want to add color mixing and skin tones to this exercise, so instead I was able to focus on realism and getting the features right, and that made it easier to tackle. My seventh tip is to upgrade slowly to quality supplies, and I'm not talking about paper since, like I said before, I think it's the most important component for success of all the tips, but take paintbrushes for instance. These paintbrushes you find in the dollar store or with paint sets for kids can be, in some cases, a gamble. And I can't say they're always bad or anything, but at least with a brand you can find at the art store, you're going to be more safe to produce good results with your watercolor. And I'd say the same for paints. Get a brand that's common in the art world. I've experimented with the two types of watercolor paints that are available for artists, and those two are student grade watercolors and artist grade watercolors. And while the latter is supposed to be a lot better and light fast over time, I was really satisfied with student grade watercolors, and they were a lot more affordable. So I'd recommend to try out a few paint brushes, and if you can, samples of different paints if you have that option, to see what fits you, what you like best. My supplies are listed in the description if you'd like to check them out, but overall for paints, I like the Winsor & Newton artist grade watercolors, but very honestly, I think it's more of a luxury on my part to use those, and I could very well use student grade watercolors that are cheaper, like I used to at the beginning, and you wouldn't see the difference. Unless you're trying to sell your art or you want to make sure the colors last, student grade is just fine. And for paint brushes, I use natural hair fibers a lot, which is also more expensive usually. But here I wouldn't compromise because I feel a lot more comfortable painting with these type of paintbrushes. I feel they work a lot better for me. And maybe you're just different because you're not doing the same type of work I'm doing with watercolors. So I think when it comes to paintbrushes, it's going to be a personal quest of finding the brush, the paintbrush that's going to fit your type of work best and that's going to give you the best results. My 8th tip is to take all the online courses you can. I did some tutorials on YouTube when I started watercolors and it helped me a lot. Then I stopped taking courses because I wanted to create things on my own for my channel, and I was afraid to get too inspired by a few people and end up developing a similar style rather than my very own. But I realized I put a lot of strain on myself and I impeded my learning process when I did that. Besides, learning from others rather than retreating in your own corner is part of the art world and being successful at anything you do. So I reconsidered and recently started taking classes again, and I watch YouTube tutorials, I go to Skillshare a lot, I've done classes on Teachable, and I can't tell you how much I've learned in such a short period of time and how easier it makes it to keep creating things on my own and renewing myself. I've been careful though to learn different styles from different people to make sure to have a variety of experiences and avoid copying one person because that's all I know. And if you want to see exactly what I'm talking about, if you want to take a look at my Instagram account, I post all my paintings there, whether they're my own or whether they're from a course. And if they are from a course, I set my sources. So if you want to check that out, I'll link to my Instagram below in the description. My 9th tip is to learn and practice a lot with the basic techniques of watercolor, because this way you'll end up knowing when to use which, and that will help you paint anything you like more easily. I'm talking about the wet and wet technique, which is usually better for backgrounds and first layers. And I'm also talking about the wet on dry technique, which is more handy for details in general. And there are other techniques as well that can help you get certain effects. So the more you know and experiment with, and the courses you take can help you with that, then the more you're going to recognize and anticipate when to use what to produce a specific result. And once you reach that point, it's a great feeling, and I can tell you it will open up new doors to your creativity. My last tip is to be as consistent as you can. And yes, of course, painting every day is ideal, but we don't all get to do that. I myself cannot always find the time because I have 4 kids to care for at home. I have chores, meals to cook, and just life. But at least painting once or twice or 3 times a week is great. I probably paint around 2 to 4 times a week, I'd say. It's been that way since July of 2019. And doing that and applying all of the previous tips at my level and with all I need to do at home, I've still managed to come a long way 8 months later. So with a little bit of planning, I trust you'll find a way to be consistent too if you aren't yet, and you'll see progress over time. I hope my tips have helped you and motivated you to dive into the medium a little more if you were wondering how to get better at it. And if you find this video valuable, please let me know with a comment, a like, or by sharing it on social media. And if you're not yet subscribed, don't forget to do so and turn on notifications to get more tips and tutorials. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.